When you get to a transmitter site or a studio site for that matter, good question that I like to ask is what kind of tools do you have there? Now, why would you want to have tools at a transmitter site? Well, there's several reasons. One of which is you can't carry everything in your car, or even if you have a pickup truck, that's asking a lot to have one of everything that you might need. So there's some things that you can lighten the load by having out there, and there's some other things that it's just more convenient than having to run out to the car to pick up a DVM or something like that. So I thought today we could chat among ourselves a little bit. We could share preferences or problems. On the broadcast list this past week or so, somebody mentioned that the Exolite screwdrivers are not at the same level of hardness as most of us remember. And if you've got a package of Exolites in the plastic box, you know you don't want to let anybody take those away because they really work well. And it'd be a really terrible thing to spend the kind of money that you get and not have a workable tool. I did try to get hold of Exolite, which is now owned by Weller, which is owned by Apex, but they don't seem to care about broadcasters or even responding to telephone or email messages. I don't understand that. Their media relations are not very relation, so we'll leave that alone. So let's just start with a few things off the top of our heads, and then see what you have. But I will start with something that maybe you wouldn't think of immediately, or maybe you would, and that is a lockable toolbox. Why would you want that? How many stations are now diplexing and triplexing and sharing a transmitter building? And would you really want your tools to be available to everybody? Well, in some cases, neighborliness says yes. On the other hand, if you come out to work on your transmitter and your Exolite kit is missing or your soldering pencil disappeared, you will find the reason to have a toolbox available. I don't know if anybody in our group here today has had that issue, or feel free to chime in. Alternate A will unmute your microphone. Space bar will do the same thing as well.
Barry, up at some of the towers, we've installed fully enclosed lockable rack drawers.
That makes sense.
Of course, you could always just pick up the toolbox, walk away with it.
When I'm out to dinner or I'm at a client meeting and I get the alarms, where would my tools be but back in the shop?
Yeah, exactly. And so this is the key reason why you want to have some basic tools on site everywhere that you might be called to go. So what would you want? First
A,
thing,
la-
obviously,
a labeler,
well,
because I find that a lot of times when people do immediate repairs and stuff, no one labels anything. And that's why I try to always have P-touches sitting at the transmitter site.
okay. I think that may be something to have, or a big Sharpie pencil to write on David's head so he knows who he is.
That and batteries. How many times do you go to work? And I went to work the other day and my voltmeter, the 9 volt had died. And you need batteries all the time.
Well, that's true. And not just the 9 volt battery or the AAAs for your DVM, but the fact is that most transmitters have got a little battery inside holding the settings in case of a power outage.
Right, a 2032.
Usually that's what it is. And in the Nautels, for instance, I imagine they're the same in the Gates or the BE. So you want to have those available. And, when you go out to a site and you haven't checked it for a while, you might find that the existing battery, especially if it's been there over a year, might have run down. And in the next power flash, you might lose all your settings. The transmitter won't come back up until you access it directly. That's one of the things. So screwdrivers, both flat and Phillips, are, I think, a key. Couple of sizes. I think the sets you can buy uh, almost anywhere. I mean, let's face it, you could get a set at Harbor as well as you could buy a set from Granger. And when you do that, now you want to have something that's got that flat head and it's got the Phillips head. The Exolites that we used to have, or maybe you still do, have the hand torque, which is good. But another thing that's now ubiquitous are the little screwdrivers where you can swap the heads on it, and perhaps even go ahead and have a ratchet included. I've seen them for as low as $20, but I think uh, the needs of having something reliable might be that you might want to spend something a little more than that.
Barry,
Yes, sir.
I was going to get back to the battery for a moment. What I used to do before I retired was on those 2032 batteries or whatever what battery was in the transmitter. When I would put one in, I'd take a little sticky label with a date on it or write it on the battery if I could. And then about a year later, just change the battery.
That'd be a good thing to have in the maintenance checklist for a particular site.
Right.
Oh, we could do that another week. What do you do on a weekly, a monthly, 6 monthly, yearly basis? All those things like that.
That, and don't put the batteries in a metal drawer.
Don't don't put them in David's pocket either. They won't be around when you need them. Eric mentions he wants the lockable toolbox to smash the telephone and evade the phone cops. I read something this morning I thought was very interesting. Apparently, and it's starting over in Europe, Hewlett-Packard, HP, now has done a little more than just have a message alerting you to, due to the excessive number of phone calls or a large number of people calling, they now have it set so that you will have a minimum 15-minute wait if you call HP tech support. So there you go. All right. Screwdriver, flat, hex, Phillips. Then what about hex? You want something hex so that you can use that. And then there's sockets. You could have them in a screwdriver handles, set up, or have a little socket set, all of which would be very important to have.
And don't forget a greenie.
Well, you get one right in your Exolite set. Do you have your Exolite set, David?
I have 3 of them. One
Good.
at each transmitter site and one in my car.
Well, there you go. I have a small, I have you want to talk about the greenie specifically. I've got the short greenie and the long greenie and the very long greenie. But of course, we don't have quite as many pieces of gear that you need a greenie to adjust anymore, but there are some.
And the blue one as well, the blue Phillips.
Now, when we get to a transmitter site, it's probably useful to be able to plug your laptop in, isn't it? Or Wi-Fi to it or something along those lines. And so you want to make sure you have the right cords to get into the router or the password, whichever is necessary. I think there's another thing that is probably useful with that laptop. That would be a flash drive. And what would you want on the flash drive? Well, how about all the manuals for all the equipment there? Manufacturers aren't sending out those big, thick book manuals anymore. They'll not even send a CD out in most cases or a DVD. They'll give you a web URL and expect you to download the manual yourself. So you do that, put it on a flash drive, and then have it available. You could have a flash drive sitting there at each site with the manuals for that particular site. And you could even have, one that has everything on it that you carry in your car. But again, the idea in the winter time, like right now in some areas, if you don't have to go outside the building each time you need a piece of gear, that's probably a plus, isn't it? How about an IP powered strip so that you could remotely uh, reset your remote control transmitter or turn the lights on before you get there or turn on the room heater in some cases. There are a number of these IP switchers that are available. And again, I would recommend to you several. Monoprice has one that I like at a decent price, but there are many others, and you can get those.
Yeah, Barry, I just started carrying in my bag the adapters, both of them, for USB-A to USB-C, because you're starting to find a lot of equipment that does not have maybe USB-A anymore.
Yes,
And
yes.
so, it pays to have those little tiny adapters that will plug into a USB-A and give you a USB-C to connect to.
I'm assuming you have multiple screens because we're looking at your ear.
Yes, actually, I guess the smart move is to move the camera over by where I have all of you guys.
Anyway,
And on that vein, also to have a phone charger, because nothing is worse than when you're on support and your phone battery dies.
now let's go back here to what Eric was talking about, and you think about having these things on site, and they don't have to be very expensive things, but what I found at CES is that not all the computer cables are the same, and specifically the USB-C. How do I know this? I got myself a very nice terabyte flash drive from Hyundai. It's only about 2 inches square. It's great to carry around, put in your pocket, put in your toolbox, whatever. And then I went to pull some files off it, and it didn't work. It acted like there was nothing there. And I went round and round and round. I popped it open. I looked inside. I watched the little light come on when it got powered up. Still nothing. Finally, I got the right cord, and I discovered that a number of USB-C cables carry power only and do not carry data. I confirmed that with the USB consortium that was showing at one of the press events during CES this year. And a number of manufacturers, like One World Computing and a few others, are now printing on the cable whether they will carry data and what length in terms of speed and capacity.
I ran into the same thing. Those cables are pretty much intended for charging at public venues so that you don't get hacked.
Yeah, I used to have a little thing that was a USB-A, male on one side, female on the other, and it only allowed the power through. And that was the, if you wanted to charge your phone at an airport or something, stick that in the line, and that would prevent, if the thing had been gimmicked to hack every phone that plugged into it, it protected you from any kind of data transmission. All they could do is draw power.
I looked this up about a month ago with regards to USB A and C. There's 57 different cords, cables that are out there, including the ones that have smart heads on them that make the request for more power, more voltage. I end up carrying these little checkers that will read out what the voltage is at any one point in time on the A's and the C's. And then there's a more expensive one that I don't carry on me, but it actually talks about the language that's used and the requests that are made off the cables back into the power supplies.
That could get pretty intense and detailed, and IT professionals certainly would want to have those sort of things.
Right. And some of the USBs now, you have to find a chart to look it up. But, the old days of, if it's a USB, it's a USB. Well, if it's got black plastic in it, it's one kind. If it's got blue plastic, it's a different kind. If it's got red plastic, maybe it's a USB 3 capable one. And all those little colors that are inside the connector, if you know how to decode it, will tell you, okay, this is capable of such and such a speed or such and such a cable length or whatever. But just being the right flavor of connector now doesn't always help you.
We're looking at over 100 watts flying out of USB-Cs now at 12 or 18 volts, all the way up to 40 is what I've been told.
Well, they keep doing things that change the technology, and nothing stays the same, as those of us that grew up with tube transmitters and cart machines can only attest to easily. Let's continue here with the connectors, and we mentioned IP power strips. A couple people have put in the chat box that the stations where they've worked have utilized these because very often, if you have an internet connection which is not stable, or if you have a all right, go ahead.
I don't blame them.
Just laughing, Barry.
All right. All right. So if you have these situations, it can be very helpful to be able to pull up on your desktop the site and then do a reboot on either piece of equipment, exciter, transmitter, Jeff Adams, anything like that. So that's good to have, the IP power strips. Now, Rich, you put something here about a Canadian 2032. That's a joke, isn't it?
Yeah. Yes, it is.
All right.
I had hoped that Jeff was here.
Jeff will be here next week.
Okay. Now, as far as IP Wi-Fi strips, all my lights are Wi-Fi lights controlled by Alexa. And, oh, there she goes. And my thermostat is controlled from anywhere. So these things can do almost anything.
So you mean if we were to say something like, oh, I don't know, Alexa, turn off the lights, you'd be sitting in the dark?
We'll
That
know.
didn't work.
We'll know soon.
I have to call it the A word.
Yeah. Well, you may remember some time ago there was somebody who said that, or said something similar, that set an alarm for 3 a.m. and immediately I had an alarm for 3 a.m.
Or going up to somebody's front window and yelling in, Alexa, unlock the front door.
Please don't keep saying Alexa.
Oh, sorry. Now my wife has her system set up so that both Siri and Alexa only listen to her voice. And she had an IT tech help her with that. I can't trip it at all.
Right. Yeah, well, there's a second word, but unfortunately the second word that they chose was computer, which is much more common for somebody to say. But I had a friend that said, I wish they would give you either more choices or your own choice, because he always wanted to call the machine that controlled all that stuff demon. So that when you wanted to say, you'd say, you know, demon, turn the lights off.
I had the problem with the word computer in my living room. I had to change it to Ziggy because every time I'd watch Star Trek, Leonard Nimoy would open it up.
Well, then we're probably going to see a change coming along with some of these home units in the next couple of years. The Google system, uh, the A system, Rich, or the others, and they'll have to do. I think with AI, you're going to have the ability to make changes, and it's going to have to be more secure because again, with AI, Reiner can emulate his wife's voice with very little effort anymore. So yeah, that is something I hadn't thought of in terms of somebody walking up to the door and shouting, "Open the lock." That could be a real problem.
I think they did change that, or one of the companies changed it so you could lock the door but not unlock the door.
Don't know.
For just that reason.
Yeah, it would make sense. I don't know. If you come up with who it is, let us know carefully. and
I don't think I'd let the A word unlock my doors.
I'm not sure I want any words to unlock my door. Even finger, fingerprints. Sometimes those are a good idea. Sometimes they're not. I think I like the ones that I saw from, who was that, Quickset last month, that as you approach the door, the Bluetooth in your phone will open the lock, but nobody else's Bluetooth. So that's all good.
Yeah, I think that they, sort of a built-in two-factor that they give you a fob or something that had to be nearby. I mean, I have a newer car, and I can walk up to the door, put my hand on the handle, and open it because I'm standing there with the key fob in my pocket. It won't open for anyone else.
Correct.
Because you have to have your hand in the door handle and the fob within like 2 feet of the door.
The ones I really dislike is when the battery does start to run out on those key fobs. You have a little bit of a hard time unless you have a built-in key sometimes for that. Or if you're up at a transmitter site, very often the key fob won't work at all.
Too much.
I got to say, so far that system with the Bluetooth on my phone works very well for unlocking the car. I got a Tesla, and it works very well. Although I have to admit, I have not yet tested it around high-powered RF, such as at Mount Wilson. I'm a little nervous at that, but I did see a photo where a club went up there, and they had a whole bunch of Teslas lined up in the big parking lot there, and they seemed to be okay. But I have a BMW that I have to use my key to open it when I get up there.
Yeah, I think it's going to depend upon the make and model, the age, some of the software. Again, like everything else, the software people are learning as they go which of these things works, and as they try different frequencies, they come into different issues, and depending upon the intermod products on a given site, that may have something to do with it.
Well, and you're also down to battery. They actually sent me to school for a little while with the sales rep, and he said, now if the battery in your fob is dead, there's this little metal key that's, you know, inside the fob, and you can use that to unlock the door. But then there's no keyhole to start the car. So they said there's a transponder that if you take the key fob, even with a dead battery in it, and you hold it right over the start stop button and press the button, it can tell that the fob was there, even if it didn't have a good battery in it. But, you know, it is possible to unlock your car and drive away, but you have to know all the tricks.
Yeah, exactly.
I saw an online example of security cameras with AI behind them that can identify who you are when you drive in. And as you approach your front door, the AI recognizes it's you. So it will allow the front door to be unlocked.
Well,
is
there's also a lot of you can interrogate it. And who left the package? What time did Reiner come home? All those different things can be done, and there are already privacy people who are saying some of these AI things know too much and share too much, and users need to understand what can be driven out of the AI. Before we pass on to anything else, let's finish off here. Things that need to be at each site. And I'm going to mention air filters should have these things at the site. Not that you carry five different kinds of filters in your car or truck. I think that's a very important thing to have. A first aid kit should be there. You should have some water on site, if nothing else. Okay, if you can enjoy it, put a 6-pack of your favorite cola, and you can drink that a little warm, but you're not going to die of thirst. Light bulbs. Have you ever thought about what happens if the lamps in your lights die? Now, doesn't happen too often, but you could have a power surge or a lightning hit. And I've been into transmitter buildings where the lights were all out, and that's not a fun place to be. So you might want to have either replacement lamps or a lamp all by itself, or carry in a lamp with you. How about a soldering pencil? Yeah, maybe. How about a spare breaker for the power box? Could be.
but a little VTBM.
What's that?
Just a voltmeter, something to do continuity checks.
Yeah, I mentioned a DVM earlier. Also a voltage probe. An AC voltage probe is a good thing to have on hand.
Yeah,
And,
we've added some Cat 6 spare Cat 6s long enough to jump, couplers and a crossover coupler, which has come in handy once in a while.
the units that I have, the AC, I actually have a few more left over from something we did with Radio Guide years ago. And if you would like to have an AC voltage tester, get in contact with me and send me some postage, and I'll send you a voltage tester. The same thing goes with the DVM. You can go down to Granger or Harbor Freight or almost anywhere and get a DVM, a simple DVM, for something on the order of $20. Sometimes even this past week, one of them, I think it was Jameco, was advertising them for $10, marked down as a special of the week. And so why not have a DVM at every site? Again, you could have a great fluke in your vehicle, but if all you need to do is find out if the wall wart is putting out voltage, a little DVM will save you a trip outside.
Yeah, Barry, I was going to say that Harbor Freight had at least they did have, I think they still do, a simple little VOM, that the voltometer that I think they sell it for about $5, maybe $5.95, and I have two of them. And I also have a really good Simpson meter, but I find that for 99% of the stuff that I do, the simple little 5 volt meter is perfectly adequate. And if I drop it or mash it or something, there's no big loss.
Yep.
I would stay away from the red one though. They're not consistent.
Well, I
Uh,
find mine is. I've got two red ones and so forth. Yeah, I got to take that back. There was one time something did happen that I thought, what's wrong here? But then it only happened once. It
yeah,
was telling me, I think it was telling me a 9 volt battery was 20 volts or something. And I said, oh, that's impossible.
no, it's more along the lines of if you're trying to read resistance. If you want to do continuity, you're fine.
Yeah.
As far as that goes, but as far as resistance, be careful if you're trying to get it, because it's not consistent on its accuracy at all.
Yeah,
So,
I would have to agree. It's a simple meter, so you want to use it on simple stuff.
Yeah, it depends on how good a contact you have between the voltage and the ground, or any other situation. So yeah, you're going to get some very widely ranging readings on some of the. But if all you need to know is there voltage, that's one thing. If you need to know, is it 520 ohms or 605 ohms, not necessarily is that going to tell you a lot with the cheapest of the DVMs. But again, that's why you carry the Fluke. And when you're not sure, you go out, okay, get the check it out, go out and get the Fluke, and you'll be happy.
Couple of
Actually,
values
somebody just called for the
helpful, too.
USB flashlight. Larry, that's a very good thing to have, that, they'll recharge off of a phone charger. And the other thing that I still have in my bag, especially for if I'm at a remote, not a site that I run, but some other location, the little device that you plug into the wall socket that has 2 yellow and 1 red neon bulb on it, that'll tell you, oh, look, the neutral is open on this, or something like that, is
Sure,
very
absolutely.
useful.
This is from Phoenix, and it is a LED light, which not only does it have 5 different levels of illumination from goodness, 150 candle power to 5,000. You can see this thing a mile away. It also has a push on, push off, a light that's on continuously, a strobe. If you want to really alert somebody somewhere, whether you're 200 foot up on a tower, or Brendan Carr was 1,800 foot up. If you saw the video this week and you want to make sure that somebody down below is knowing that you're signaling them, a pretty strong light like that will do so. And you just take the end off of this and you plug it into your USB and it recharges, which is great.
Yeah, and
So
that little battery that's in there has kind of been standardized. I can't remember which one it is, but you can get those at, like, Micro Center or other places that, that kind of extra large AA sized battery that's in all those flashlights.
There's little lights that are no bigger than this, that'll have 1,000 candle power, that'll run on 3 AAAs. Very simple. And if the AAAs die, you don't have to worry about what's compatible with it. But the nice thing about this one is it's a USB, and I can I, you can see what happens when I
You
shoot the camera.
disappear.
Well, I use this one. I got it's blinding. I got it for about $25 at Home Depot.
Hmm. They've come way, way, way down. I have, from years ago, I have a nice bright LED flashlight. It's got, it's got a handle that's, you know, can I get both of my fingers up here? somewhere. Anyway, it's as wide as a screen would be anyway, and it runs on D cells. And that's what they always used to run on, right? D cells. But who wants to carry around 6 or 8 D cells anymore? And when you can have a small package,
I keep this in my pocket.
that's the one I'm talking about.
This one came from Innovonics. They
Yep.
threw it in a box when I ordered something.
And if you open it up, it's got a little thing in there that holds 3 AAAs, right?
Now this one has 3 button batteries,
Oh, well, okay.
but I've had this for about 2 years and they haven't run out yet.
Yeah, they'll last a long time. They really will. And
By the way, this is that foldable one that I was talking about. If you
that's a good
can
one.
see my image, it says work light,
Yes.
very wide LED beam and magnetic base. Just stick it into an equipment rack and illuminate whatever it is you're trying to work on.
Oh, yeah,
Got your-
those are
got
good.
your
I got
Nautel one?
Also.
Still have your Nautel one?
I don't have a Nautel one.
Magnetic base? Big. Well, let's see. I know I've got one over here.
I think my dad got one of those at, Harbor Freight, it was in their, you don't know what, I don't know what you're getting for quality, but I think they had it in their ad. You just, tear the coupon off and bring it to the store and they hand you one.
That's what I did.
Everyone that went to the Nautel Nug a few years ago got one of these. And it's well, let's see. I don't know if yeah, you can see the lights. I think if I hold it just right.
Harbor Freight also has one that's a 12 that sticks into the 12-volt the car the standard car 12-volt socket. And so that's nice to have with you, so you don't even have to worry about where you're going to put it when you're not using it. You just leave it right in there and you've already got it, and you've got it in the car with you.
And the
So
base is magnetic. So that's a nice, from what you were talking about, Larry, that you could, put it inside of your transmitter and turn it on, and you can, see.
Yes, exactly. I mostly used them inside equipment racks. A lot of
Mhm.
transmitters have a lot of aluminum inside, but most of the racks are still steel and the magnet works pretty well.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So having a selection probably is a good thing. The Nautel that I was just showing you, it's a pair of AA's. So again, something really, really cheap that you can replace if you want to do that. Or those Phoenix are really nice and bright.
up at the Red Barn Flea Market, I found they had USB clip-on, and they don't put out a lot of light, but I put it in the back of the racks, aiming down at the equipment. So if you are working back there and the lights do go off, the big lights, the room lights, you don't run out of light for that period of time.
And one more thing, if you're training a young guy and you want to make yourself look really wise and great, you can always have one of these.
In multiple languages.
Barry, something that I have, I think I have a couple of them, and that's a device for testing RJ45 cables. And you put a thing on the far end. Yeah, I kind of forget, I haven't used it for a while, but I remember I put something on each end, and I guess I had to go back and forth or whatever. But anyway, I did find some bad RJ45 cables by using this device, and it wasn't very expensive. And it kind of what it does, really, it's a continuity tester that automatically steps between each conductor, and you look at the other end, and as the lights go along, and if a light is missing, you say, oh, okay, that wire in there is bad, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, I got one of those too, sitting in the drawer.
One of the things that I ended up one of the things I ended up building is or finding is really on sale was a palm size floodlight with magnets on it that you will stick in the rack or stick onto your automobile, but also it's a power bank for both a C and a USB-A, and power up a phone a couple of times.
By the way, this thing's got 12 different languages.
Tão fácil.
I have no idea what that is.
Tutto è più facile.
New version of Russian roulette, huh?
Where's the language switch? Mine doesn't have one.
You twist it. You just
就是这么简单。
so I see Canadian. Apparently, Canadian is different from American.
Are you sure you want to do that there, Ray?
Let's see.
Does it happen to have German on it?
Yes, it does.
Oh, play that.
Yeah, if it's got the flags, then it's the
Einfach easy.
multi-language. Yeah.
Einfach easy.
That's the Canadian. This should be German.
Tão fácil. 就是这么简单。
It sounds Japanese to me.
That was, oh, wait a minute. Let's see. You got to figure out the right one here. I don't know, guys. This one, it's got a very, very light little arrow on the side. And
Appreciate it. Sounds great.
I guess you got to figure out where it is.
That was easy. Fácil. Tão fácil. É tão
Now
fácil.
you got to figure out how to get it back to English.
就是这么简单。
I think this has got to be German,
就是这么简单。
Maybe.
maybe.
29 broadcast
That was
engineers.
easy. Rien plus simple.
29 broadcast engineers playing.
And,
With an easy button.
and more on YouTube.
Play it into your phone and get your phone to translate it, and it'll tell you what language it is, right?
Yeah, that's
Rich,
true.
Rich, you forgot to start that sentence by how many whatever does it take to
To use an easy button.
Amazing. So, any other suggestions before we close the section on what to have at the transmitter site?
Wasp spray.
Wasp spray. Probably a good idea. Ant and pest spray for those that can't resist bringing food with them to work.
How about having a helper with you at the transmitter site?
What's that?
Sometimes you get lucky and you get to go there with another person when you're working on a project. And of course, I mentioned that a change of clothes was a good thing. I've been up there in a number of storms. And being able to get dry again is a help, especially if you're going to be stuck there for hours waiting for the power to come back.
Well, tallow is a good thing to keep you with you anyway. So, yeah.
In most places where there are unions in operation, it's required to have two people on site, that you cannot work on high voltage alone.
Well, that seems smart to me.
But out in the rurals, out in the smaller towns, that's not necessarily true. And
Well,
then again, like everything else that says, what the insurance or the law says. When somebody talked here about Brendan Carr going up 1,800 feet, other people were talking about they wouldn't climb 50 feet or 200 feet, or they're prohibited from doing it, although sometimes they do it anyway. But, if they fell and had a problem, they'd probably get fired for having violated corporate standards.
Well, at WGBH, we had someone fall into a klystron. Apparently, they had defeated the interlock. Fortunately, there was someone who was able to pull him out.
No one's mentioned a coffee pot yet.
Well, I
a
mentioned having a 6-pack of your favorite drink.
I mean, a good pair of gloves is not a bad choice, and also that stuff, waterless hand cleaner is also useful.
Yeah.
If you're at a site that does not have water.
Mm-hmm.
And a mask sometimes is a useful thing.
True.
And also the little gloves that you can put on, little nitrile gloves to keep your hands clean and free of grease.
And then, of course, if we were to go and discuss being outside, whether it be knocking down the foliage or repairing the fence or covering over the radials and things like that. Now we have other things to consider, but at each site, basic toolkits really make a lot of sense.
How about a bolt cutter?
Wouldn't you have that in your truck?
Well,
you need the bolt cutters to get in, right?
Right.
Yeah, the problem comes in. That's right. But the problem comes in is that you may not have enough room for the bolt cutters. So you probably have to find something outside where you can hide it.
Now, here's a
A
question,
box.
a comment rather, that brings up a question more to my way of thinking of what's going on up there altogether. And it is, don't forget TP. There are far too many sites that do not have any facilities whatsoever. I remember being in Detroit at one that you had to go 10 miles down the road to a convenience store to find anything at all. I suppose you could be knocking on neighbors' doors.
Well,
But,
somebody earlier said TP and a shovel.
well, that's one way to do it.
I can tell you that working up at Sutro Tower, you're required to have a hard hat if you're outside.
Mm-hmm. And we get all into the things about your car, parking them under something that will divert the ice in those climates and other projectiles. We could, really go on for quite a while coming up with ideas. Jeff was talking about the bolt cutter, having a spare lock. Have you ever gotten to a site and you had to use your bolt cutter because the electric guy didn't re-hook the chain properly? Now you need to have a lock. Or you could call the guy from the utility and yell and yell and yell. Wouldn't do you
Well, I
much.
know a friend of mine used to, do directional measurements in Texas. And apparently the standard thing in Texas is if you reach a gate and, you have reason to be on the other side of the gate, you cut the chain and put your own lock on it, and that's your future entrance to that spot. And you'll get to some fences that'll have like 10 locks interlinked with all the companies and people that have to pass through that gate. The pipeline company and the radio engineer that's measuring his radials and, the power company, and everybody's got their own lock. Daisy
No,
chain
that's
together.
that's what I was talking about, that you end up with this chain of locks. And if one of the utility guys or government employees fails to rehook it properly, you may be reduced to being a bolt cutter. No.
I usually just cut the offending bolt, the offending lock. But that probably isn't a bad idea, though, carrying a second lock with you and cutting the chain link, because then you can just go ahead and put your own on another one on there. So in the event that one of them gets locked out, you could still unlock the other one and possibly get entrance that way.
No, it's been probably 20 years now, but I did some contract work for a guy who had some people coming in and doing yard work or something. I don't know what it was, but I got out there and it was a 1 hour drive to get to this site, and I couldn't get in because the lock had been bypassed. So I used a file, cut the chain, put my own chain on with my lock, and then I got the complaints about these other jerks that couldn't get in, and I said, I don't care. You want to get in, you live by the rules.
Well, use the same kind of locks they used at WJLX in Jasper. Now, I've seen many videos where the transmitter site doors were just left open.
Yeah. And the lock, the lock on the gate is 1776. Oh, shouldn't combo lock. There are many ways of doing this. I mean, especially with the newer locks and the electronic locks, there's so many ways of doing this that can be more and more safe. Clay showed me a thing they used up in the Seattle area. It was a gate that had a long uh, uh, sliding uh, arm, and you could put 10 locks on there. In any one lock coming off, the thing would open. Ron mentions a combination lock. The station was the frequency, the old frequency. Now there you go.
Barry, I've liked the little trio pack for $5 or whatever that's at Harbor. It's like little Swiss Army knives of hex and hex metric, and then some of the security drives. That's a nice set of little palm-sized tools to have.
Yeah, there are a lot of them. Some of them uh, picked up at the NAB show at the different companies that I remember. Continental had a little plastic goodie with 4 or 5 bits in it, and you could use it to do simple projects. May even have one of them somewhere around here.
Another thing to keep at the transmitter site would be a shop vac for cleaning out the transmitter whenever you actually, shut things down and all that. At least with the old tube type, it was a handy thing.
Well, yeah. Of course, if you have 5 sites, would you have 5 shop vacs?
They ain't that expensive, so yeah, probably.
Could have one of the little handheld guys.
Some of these
broom.
sites you might not have the room for to put leave a shop vac in there.
A broom, a dustpan, all sorts of things you could a bottle of squirt and some paper towels to clean stuff off.
I'm gonna say a small roll of garbage can liners comes in handy to put rack equipment going back and garbage to take out.
It's interesting. The more you think about it, the more things that come up that you either used or wish you had at a time.
But now we've got more tools at the transmitter site than there's room.
Unless you've got a big Klein box or something you can lock up. But then what would you carry in the back of your truck?
Well, I don't know that you'd want a huge box, but what was the comment earlier about having drawers in a rack or something that was reasonably stable or screwed down. A shared site, that opens a lot of possibilities and issues.
Yeah, we had a series of drawers that didn't have a top on them, which was stupid because you could just go into the back of the rack and reach in. We also carry a hard copy, or we place atop the tools, a hard copy of things that you might not be able to pull up. We have a couple of sites that once you go inside the building, you can't phone out, you can't get a hold of anything in the cloud, especially if the computers are down or something.
Well, maybe I'm just old school, but everywhere I worked, it seems the company provided the tools. Unless you're talking about contract work.
Well, that's a large part of the business now.
I think you are old school here, Rich, in that because I would say the last several last couple decades anyway, I've had to supply my own tools for the jobs that I've had, electronic and otherwise.
Yeah, for me, the same since about 91.
I mean, some of the employers have to be a little bit careful about this stuff if they don't, if they don't provide you with tools and they don't provide you with a lot of other things, then that often determines whether or not you're a contractor or an employee. They may want to, they may want to call you one thing, but if they're also not supplying the stuff that you need to work, then it's like, well, no, I'm a contractor. You make me buy my own tools, so.
Well, this also plays into what your contract is. If they want you to charge them a lower amount of money on a monthly basis, then they ought to have the tools there. If they want to pay a large amount, then yeah, you'll haul your own scope in, or spectrum analyzer, as the case may be. But
Stuff like that, yeah, stuff like that's usually been provided, and hand tools though is where the problem comes in.
Yeah, Rich, some places in Alabama don't even supply the transmitter.
No, it's the tower.
Yeah, it's the tower.
Very good line though.
Well, I remember when I was working at Sirius XM when I first started there, I thanked the guy who actually did a lot of the construction there, and I said, at long last, someone has moved the transmitter far enough away that I won't have to go there, because we stored it in outer space.
Are you suggesting cloud-based transmission?
We were beyond the cloud, I guess.
Yeah, we had a discussion a few weeks ago with Radio Cloud and how to try to overcome the places where you have issues. Now, I know of a number of places where the IT department just does not allow anything. I know a radio station where they wanted to look at they're not allowed to even see their own transmitter. Now, kind of suggested to them that this kind of violated a few of the rules from a certain regulatory agency, but their IT department just blocks everything. And then this goes back to a discussion, goodness, we must have had this discussion 3 years ago or so about the need for IT and tech to be a team and not two silos that don't talk to each other. And there are some stations and groups where the IT department is part of the team, and there are some where you can't even get straight answers ever.
Barry, I happen to think of something that going back to you mentioned giving away those AC electrical testers that you had acquired some years ago.
Yes, sir.
a little careful about that because there's a battery inside those things. I had one that was all sealed up and you couldn't change the battery. I guess they figured you throw it away when it quit working. But I busted it open and found it had a Radio Shack battery in there. And I think it was made by Fluke, if I remember correctly. So you don't want to give somebody, my point is, you don't want to give somebody an electrical tester that doesn't work and they think it's working. I've got a newer one now that I think you have to push a button on it and it does a self test before it'll work. So you don't have one with a dead battery and you get yourself electrocuted simply because the electrical tester is no good.
Well, if I knew we were going to talk about that, I would have pulled one of these out. But the batteries are actually in the package. Although at this age, I don't know if the batteries are still. Eventually, batteries will break down.
If you,
Well, something to think about.
yeah, if you tap on the one that you're talking about, Marvin,
Yeah,
if the battery is good, then you should get some kind of a flash for the color.
right. But some people don't think to test it ahead of time. They just say, oh, there's nothing here. And then they put their hands in there and get in trouble. So that's why I mentioned that.
Mm-hmm. It's probably the last thing they do.
Yeah. Anyway, Barry, that's good that the ones you have, the batteries are not inserted in the device. And the one that I had that I used for a long time, it was all glued together and it looked like it was designed to be disposable because once I got it open and saw what the battery was inside, I pretty much had destroyed it. So I just threw the whole thing away and bought a new one.
Mm-hmm.
Well, tagging off of what Marvin's just said, back in the early 80s, Fluke sent me a demo of a continuity detector that they were working on, completely sealed, couldn't get to the batteries, couldn't do anything about it. After I realized how rare it was, I put it up on a shelf, and just last year it stopped working. So this lasted, 35, 40 years on one set of batteries, and I wasn't using it every day, but it just sat there. And all it did was light up. It had no beeping or anything. It just had a series of LEDs in the front edge, and part of what must have been a MOS detector or something in the day.
Yeah, that was must have been a really good battery just to have a shelf life that's that long.
And considering I was told at one point in time they made like 200 of them and passed them out to electricians in the area out of Seattle. And I was proud to have that. The next thing they needed to do is put a wind up on it or something.
Yeah, it's too bad you couldn't open it up and put a new battery in it, but I guess it was all glued shut. And it would.
And I know my hacksaw kept screaming to me, "Come on, you really want to get it open and see what's going on?"
Yeah.
If they were smart and they knew that we would be hanging around transmitters, they could have put a little detector diode and charging circuit in there.
Right.
I was going to tag off of what Eric said earlier about the 3-light detector that we all carry, or electricians carry all the time. For about $4 or $5 more, I found on occasion the same thing, except for it has an LED readout of RMS at under 400 hertz. So you can see what the voltage is when you plug it in. And also it had a tone. You could flip this little, toggle push button, and it would start beeping like crazy the minute you went and found the breaker and turned the power back on. Or you could plug it in and hear it 5 or 6 rooms away or the next floor up, and then go through and start tripping breakers. So from an electrician standpoint, it was very cool. But I have one up at one of the towers, and I have had to use it because every single rack has power from 2 different inverter buses, low voltage up, as well as 2 different straight from the power company feeds, or actually it goes through a cutover switch.
Well, here we go. This is the Radio Guide AC voltage tester. And as you can see, there are little batteries there on the side. I have no idea how old those batteries are.
I had a interesting experience where that little 3-light detector came in handy. I was working on a teletype machine in my radio room here at home, and I said, "Yipes! I just got a shock." And the way things were going, I said, that should not have been possible. So I got out my 3-light device and plugged it into the wall outlet and found out that I've been living in this house for 50 years, but never discovered this before, but found out that the hot and the neutral were reversed. So I pulled the plugs out of the wall and reversed them and got them straightened out. But that was somewhere somebody wired that years ago and made a big mistake.
Well, I had that with an audio processor some years ago in a radio studio, and before they had the flanged the electrical plugs. But here's another thing that I've had. I have one or two more of these. It's actually a thermometer. You can measure the temperature of things. Breakers, fuses, sockets, transmitter, air filters, whatever.
Do you have to contact it, or is it just you aim it at the?
Aim it at it. Yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah.
It's got a you know, the wider you have it, the less accurate it's going to be. You know, depends on, you know, how
Yeah.